So we need to be sharing the gospel with people. We say this all the time. I'm going to say it again. And I want you to know I'm supportive of any training method that is biblical and gets used. All right? People ask, well, Pastor, what kind of training method for evangelism do you prefer? I'll tell you what I prefer. It's biblical and you use it. All right? Pretty much anything else I'm fine with. All right? Roman Road, EE, 3 circles, Evangicube, 4 spiritual laws, something else. As long as it's biblical and it gives you the confidence to get out there and actually talk to people, I'm for it. There's my official stamp of approval. But I want you to see, sometimes the situation is going to call for something beyond the initial pre-prepared lines. So let's see what Paul does. Verse 2, he keeps his custom of going into Jewish synagogues as they're available. Thessalonica has one. They have a Jewish presence, it seems, pretty big one. And so we see Paul was with them for 3 Sabbath days, which means 3 weeks, right? That means he was there for 3 Saturdays in a row, and which means they must have invited him back at least twice. For the record, he was probably dealing with Gentiles during the week and Jews on Saturdays. So what was he doing on these Sabbaths? Verse 2 tells us. He reasoned with them from the Scriptures. It's important to look at that line. He didn't just reason with them, didn't just play their Greek games and do rhetoric and academics and philosophy. No, he used the Scriptures. But he also didn't just read the Scriptures. Didn't just stand up and open it and read it and say, what are you going to do? No, he reasoned with them from the Scriptures. So the Greek word for reason used by Luke is dialegomai, which is not the word for preaching. It is not one-way communication. It means to converse, to dialogue, to have some back and forth. It's not really a debate, but it's like a mutual discovery where you can follow up with points that are made. You said this, that's interesting. Can you explain that? What did you mean by that? It's a little bit of that back and forth. Clarifying questions can be asked. And for the record, that's kind of what we do every Sunday night at Table Talk. Can I get a shameless plug for myself? Is that okay in here? Every Table Talk at 5 p.m. Sunday night, it's not a one-way sermon. In case some of you wonder what we do, I do not preach something completely new. It's a time to have some back and forth with our people. Now, I don't want this to sound like I'm tooting my horn. I'm not. Toot, toot. I'm not doing that. Or the collective Kirby Woods horn, which is a good horn for the record. But no, that's not what my intent is. But this practice of standing up before your people and subjecting yourself to Q&A is not common in churches. And it's not common because it can expose you. It can expose you. Sunday school teachers, let me see you with your hands up. Sunday school teachers. All right, you know what I'm about to tell you is true. When you prepare your lesson, the part that makes you prepare extra is not that lecture portion that you're going to say. It's that potential that someone could ask you that question, that one follow-up question that makes you think. It's what pushes a teacher to prepare above and beyond. It's why it often takes teaching something to really learn something. It's what lets people know also you're not just plagiarizing or parroting the latest curriculum or sermon that you found online. When you have to go off the beaten path and go with the flow of a living, breathing discussion, that's when you find out if you really understand the topic or not. So Paul goes in and stands up in front of this synagogue that he's never been in before, and for 3 Saturdays in a row, opens up the Old Testament to the Jews in Thessalonica and says, "Come, let us reason together." Verse 3 says more about what he meant by that. He says, we get some words here, 3 words: explaining, proving, and proclaiming. These are all what I think it means to reason. So in Greek, explaining means simply to open up. He opened it up. Proving means to set it in place. So in preacher talk, we might say he was setting the table and landing the plane. With his Old Testament in hand, he walks through and reveals all the proofs that a Jewish mind would need to hear their Messiah had to suffer, die, and rise, because that's what Jesus did. And so he's trying to show them If I could show you from your Old Testament that your Messiah was supposed to suffer, was supposed to die, and was supposed to rise, and then I can tell you this guy in Jerusalem just did that 10, 15 years ago, maybe we got something here. So that's what he does. At the end of verse 3, we see Paul says, "This Jesus whom I proclaim to you." There's another word. After explaining, opening, after proving, which is kind of pressing and settling their views, there's a proclamation. Now that word simply just means to announce. I'm just telling you what it is. So think of the 4 words here that are used to describe Paul's sharing of the gospel. We got 4 words in this text. And it really hits several facets of communication. Someone needs to write a paper on this in the Christian communications department. All right? Reasoning hits the person who needs their questions answered. Let's have some dialogue. Explaining hits the person who just needs information. You need more, to know more. Proving hits the person who says, I need evidence. Prove it to me. And proclaiming hits the person who needs a bold witness for someone to just tell them what it is. So Paul's willing to give them what they needed for the sake of the gospel lodging in their hearts. He did not go in with one plan and say, whether you like it or not, here's what you're going to get today. He read the situation, and he gave them accordingly what they needed to believe. Look at verse 4. It says, some of them, meaning Jews, were persuaded and joined Paul and Silas, as did a great many of the devout Greeks and not a few of the leading women. That's a good day, isn't it? That's a really good day. Not all the Jews believed, but some did. And a huge number of God-fearing Greeks. That means Greeks that were kind of exposed to Judaism and understood who Yahweh was. Big mess of them believed. That's really where he cleaned house. And then a lot of leading women did. We know from reading historical documents, these cities had a lot of women in high aristocratic places. So he got to them too. What Paul did in reasoning was blessed by God. In fact, this church, the Thessalonian church, ended up being one of Paul's most beloved churches if you read the letters. And in time, historically, the church at Thessalonica had a reputation in church history for being one of the strongest doctrinal churches, nicknamed the Orthodox Church. Now, I believe this is in part because of Paul's willingness not just to stand on the street corner and preach a one-way message and then go to the next town, but to commit himself to weeks of dialogue with these people, often on their turf. I used to love, it hurts me now to say this example, I used to love watching Ravi Zacharias on YouTube. And to go to college, he would go to college campuses, and he would stand in front of a hostile crowd and actually take Q&A from students who rallied to come and try to defeat his points. Now, he didn't finish well in ministry, but it was an amazing thing to watch someone willing to do that. I love a documentary called Collision with a pastor named Doug Wilson who committed a series of debates with Christopher Hitchens. You know how scared people are of Christopher Hitchens? And he went in and debated him for weeks and weeks and weeks on end and held up the Christian position. I respect Ray Comfort. You ever watch Ray Comfort videos on YouTube? Speaking to people on the street about their faith. He'd just go up to someone and engage them in a conversation. There's a pastor named Jeff Durbin who has videos speaking to Mormon missionaries. He'll even go outside abortion clinics and speak to very hostile people. He'll go into houses and senates and speak about Christian legislation. It's an amazing thing to watch someone willing to subject themselves to that kind of open-ended forum. So, Christian, let me ask you this. First of all, can you give the gospel in a canned 30-second elevator speech? Could you do that? If I said, tell me the gospel in 30 seconds, could you do it confidently? So look, I'm not here to beat you up. If the answer is no, that's the only thing you need to do this week, is to get that right. Start there. Use the tracks. Use the pre-prepared trainings. Use all of that. Get your gospel basic 30-second, 1 minute, 5 minute. Get those down, okay? But let me ask you additionally, Christian, can you do what Paul did and offer not just a presentation, but a reason for the hope that is in you? Can you dialogue about your faith without crumpling like a Popeye's biscuit? Can you explain, and can you prove, and can you proclaim? Ask yourself that question today. Can I reason, explain, prove, proclaim? Can I do those things? Can you wield the sword of the word skillfully, artfully? You know, Ephesians says the word of God is our sword in this world. The word of God is the what? The sword, okay? Kirby Woods member, I don't want you just to have a sword. I want you to be an elite fencer with it. You ever seen somebody in a movie, you know, they give the little kid, the little King Arthur kid or something, and he hands a sword and he doesn't know how to use it? I don't want you like that out in the world. I want you like those French fencers, you know, on guard. Precision, knowing how to do, like it's almost like a dance, like an art form. I want you to have a confidence that you are equipped and empowered to proclaim Christ, reason with people, apply bold truths to any situation.